Admiral Lee Taewin stood on the bridge of Kepler Station, watching the red light from the dying star paint everything in blood. The star had been stable when humans first built the station here 50 years ago. Now it was slowly burning out, just like everything else in human space. Through the massive viewing windows he could see them. The Vorthak ships floated in the darkness like huge insects made of metal and flesh. They had been there for 8 months now, waiting. Always waiting. The alien vessels looked alive because they were alive. Bioships that could grow new parts, heal damage, and worst of all, eat human technology. "Admiral, power levels are down to 60%, said Commander Choi Hiram from her station. Her voice was calm, but Lee could hear the worry underneath. Hiram had been with him since the fall of New Sol Colony. She had seen too much death to be afraid anymore, but she still cared about the people under her command. Lee nodded without looking away from the enemy fleet. 2.3 million people lived on Kepler Station. They were all that was left of 12 human colonies that had fallen to the Vorthak. The enemy had come from deep space 3 years ago, moving from system to system like a plague. Their bioships could corrupt human computers, turn human weapons against their users, and grow stronger by eating the metal from destroyed ships. "Any word from Earth?" Lee asked, though he already knew the answer. "Nothing, sir. Last message was 6 months ago. Just static since then." Dr. Park Minji looked up from her research station in the corner of the bridge. She had been working non-stop for weeks, trying to find some weakness in the Vorthak. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, and her hands shook slightly as she held her data pad. "Admiral, I think I found something," she said quietly. Lee turned to her. Any hope was better than no hope. "What is it, Doctor?" Park touched her screen, bringing up images of Vorthak genetic code. The alien DNA looked like twisted spirals with extra branches that hurt to look at. "I have been studying the bioship samples that Captain Kim brought back from his last scouting run. There is something strange in their genetic memory." "Genetic memory?" Hiram asked. "The Vorthak do not learn like we do. They are born knowing things their ancestors knew. It is all stored in their DNA." Park touched the screen again, zooming in on a specific section. "But there is something here that does not make sense. Fear markers. Terror responses. The Vorthak are afraid of something." Lee felt a small spark of interest. The Vorthak had never shown fear of anything. They attacked human fleets with cold efficiency, never retreating, never hesitating. "What are they afraid of?" "I am not sure. The genetic markers just call it the void silence, something from their ancient past. Something that made them run and hide for millions of years." Before Lee could ask more questions, alarms started blaring throughout the bridge. The main screen lit up with incoming signals from the outer sensor grid. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Han Youngji from the communications station. "Captain Kim is coming in fast. His ship is damaged." On the screen, they could see the reconnaissance vessel Silent Arrow racing toward the station. Black smoke poured from its engines, and whole sections of the hull were missing. Behind it, 3 Vorthak bioships gave chase, their organic weapons firing streams of acid that ate through space itself. "All defensive batteries target those bioships," Lee ordered. "Launch fighters to cover Kim's approach." The station's weapons opened fire, sending bright beams of energy toward the attacking aliens. The Vorthak ships twisted and moved like living things, avoiding most of the shots. Their hulls rippled and changed shape, absorbing the energy weapons and using it to grow stronger. Captain Kim Do-hyun's voice crackled through the speakers, full of static and pain. "Kepler Station, this is Silent Arrow. I have critical information. Repeat critical information. There is something big coming from the galactic core. Energy readings like nothing we have ever seen." One of the chasing bioships fired a stream of corrosive plasma that caught Silent Arrow's port engine. The small ship spun out of control, trailing fire and debris. Emergency shuttles launched from the station to pick up survivors. "Kim, what did you see out there?" Lee demanded into his microphone. "Massive energy signatures moving this way at impossible speeds. Whatever it is bigger than anything in our databases. Admiral, I think something is coming to help us." The bioships that had been chasing Kim suddenly stopped. They floated in space for a moment, then turned and raced back toward the main Vorthak fleet. Within minutes, the entire alien armada was moving into new formations. They looked nervous. Dr. Park was staring at her instruments with wide eyes. "Admiral, I am reading something strange. The Vorthak bioships are releasing stress hormones. Lots of them. They are afraid." Lee looked out at the enemy fleet. For 8 months, the aliens had been patient, slowly choking the life out of Kepler Station. Now they were moving with urgent purpose, forming defensive patterns. What could scare them? Hiram asked. Before anyone could answer, the station shook violently. Emergency lights flashed red as explosions rocked the outer hull. The Vorthak had decided to stop waiting. All sections, battle stations, Lee announced over the station-wide communication system. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. All civilians to emergency shelters immediately. Through the windows, they could see Vorthak bioships launching assault pods toward the station. The pods looked like huge seeds with teeth, designed to burrow through metal and disgorge alien warriors inside. Sir, they are targeting the civilian sectors, Hiram reported, her fingers flying over her control panel. Breach alarms in sections 12 through 18. Lee closed his eyes for a moment. This was it. After 8 months of siege, the Vorthak were making their final move. But why now? What had changed? Dr. Park, whatever Captain Kim found out there, could it be related to your void silence? Park was already working on her computer, comparing Kim's sensor data with the genetic markers she had discovered. The energy signatures, they match theoretical readings for space-time manipulation. Admiral, I think the Vorthak ancient enemy might be coming back. Another explosion shook the station. This time, Lee could hear the screaming of metal as Vorthak bioforms began eating through the hull. In the distance, he could see the alien assault pods opening like flowers, releasing clouds of insect-like warriors into the station's corridors. All security teams to civilian areas, Lee ordered. Hold them back as long as possible. But he knew it was hopeless. They had fought well for 8 months, but now the end was coming. Unless whatever Kim had detected was really coming to help them, Kepler Station would fall within hours. Lee looked out at the stars one last time, wondering if anyone would remember humanity after today. In the darkness beyond the dying sun, something flickered. For just a moment, he thought he saw shadows moving between the stars. Then the lights went out and the real battle began. 50 years earlier, Fleet Admiral Yoon Ji-woo had made a choice that would change everything. She stood in the command center of the exploration ship Eternal Dawn, staring at something that should not exist. In front of her fleet stretched a massive ring structure, so large that Earth could fit through its center like a marble through a hula hoop. Ma'am, the structure is definitely artificial, reported Engineer Onari, her voice filled with wonder and fear. The materials are unlike anything in our databases. It seems to exist partially outside normal space. Yoon had brought humanity's best military minds on this mission into the galactic core. They had been running from the Vorthak for months, seeking anything that might help them fight the alien plague spreading across human space. What they found was far more than they had hoped for. Colonel Bae Sunho approached from the scanning station, his heavy combat armor making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. Admiral, we are detecting massive power readings from inside the ring. Whatever built this thing, they had technology that makes ours look like stone tools. The ring structure was ancient beyond imagination. Their scientists estimated it had been floating here for millions of years, hidden in the dangerous radiation zones near the galactic center where no sane pilot would go. It was a perfect hiding place for humanity's last desperate gamble. Any signs of the builders? Yoon asked. Negative on life signs, Onari replied. But Admiral, there are automated systems still functioning. The ring is scanning us. I think it is trying to communicate. Suddenly, the view screen filled with images and symbols, mathematical equations that hurt to look at, star charts showing the galaxy from millions of years ago and something else, records of a war. The same war that Dr. Park Minji would discover traces of 50 years later in Vorthak genetic memory. Dr. Lim Ha-jin, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist, worked frantically to decode the alien messages. Admiral, I think I understand. This ring was built by a species that fought the Vorthak long ago. They called themselves the Architects. The Vorthak nearly destroyed them. But they managed to build this place as a final weapon. What kind of weapon? Colonel Bae asked. Not just a weapon. A factory. This ring can build ships that exist outside normal space-time. The Architects discovered how to manipulate something they called the void, the empty space between dimensions. Ships made with this technology cannot be detected or destroyed by normal means. Yoon felt her heart racing. This was exactly what humanity needed. Can we use it? Dr. Lim's expression grew serious. There is a cost, Admiral. The Architect's records show that using void technology changes the user. Gradually, over time, they become something more than human. The architects themselves eventually became beings of pure energy. They transcended physical existence, but they survived, Yoon said quietly. Yes, they survived, and they left this place for whoever came after them, for whoever needed to fight the Vorthak again. Over the following months, humanity's military leaders made the hardest decision in their species' history. They would use the architect technology to build a new kind of fleet. Ships that could hide in the spaces between dimensions, weapons that could reach through the void itself to strike enemies, but they would pay with their humanity. The ring structure became humanity's secret shipyard. Engineer Onari worked with alien machines that could reshape matter at the atomic level. Colonel Bay trained soldiers in combat techniques that required them to think in 4 dimensions. Dr. Lim studied architect science until she could barely remember what it felt like to be fully human, and Admiral Yoon commanded it all, watching her people slowly transform into something new. The void technology required genetic modifications, enhanced neural pathways that could process information from multiple dimensions at once, organs that could survive in the spaces between realities. Admiral, Onari reported during one of their weekly briefings, the first squadron of void ships is ready for testing. But the pilots, they are changing faster than we expected. Yoon nodded grimly. She could see it in the mirror every morning. Her eyes had begun to glow with a faint blue light. Her skin was becoming translucent. She could sometimes see through walls without trying. The modifications were working, but they were turning her into something that was no longer entirely human. How long do we have before the transformation is complete? She asked. For you, maybe 10 years. For the newer volunteers, perhaps 20. The process seems to accelerate the more we use the technology. Admiral Song Kyung-min entered the briefing room, moving with the fluid grace that all void-enhanced humans developed. His shadow seemed to flicker and bend in ways shadows should not move. Admiral, we have received a long-range signal from human space. The Vorthak have begun their final offensive. Multiple colonies have fallen in the past month. Yoon closed her eyes and made her decision. They had been preparing for 50 years, building their ghost fleet in secret while the rest of humanity fought and died. Now it was time to return. Signal all ship commanders, she ordered. We are going home. Captain Ryu Jiho was one of the few pilots who could still pass for completely human. He had joined the project only 5 years ago, so the changes in him were minimal. A slight glow to his eyes, enhanced reflexes, and the ability to see energy patterns that normal humans could not detect. Ma'am, the fleet is ready, he reported. 200 ships all equipped with void drives and dimensional weapons. We can phase through normal space, become invisible to conventional sensors, and our weapons can ignore most forms of armor and shielding. And our crew? Yoon asked. 15,000 volunteers, all enhanced, all committed to the mission. Ryu paused. Admiral, many of them have families back in human space, families who do not know they are still alive. Yoon understood. When they had left 50 years ago, they told everyone they were going on a suicide mission. It was easier than explaining that they might return as something no longer recognizably human. They will understand when they see what we have become, she said, what we had to become to save them. The Ghost Fleet prepared to leave the ring structure that had been their home for half a century. Behind them, the ancient architect machines continued their work, building new ships, new weapons, new tools for fighting cosmic horrors. Dr. Lim had discovered something else in the architect records. The Vorthak were not the worst thing in the galaxy. They were running from something even more terrible. Something that had destroyed entire galactic clusters in distant parts of the universe. The architects had built the ring not just to fight the Vorthak, but to prepare for what came after them. Admiral, Dr. Lim said, as they prepared to depart, there is something you should know. The architect records show that using this technology extensively will eventually cut us off from normal space entirely. We will become guardians of the void, protecting the galaxy from threats that exist between dimensions. How long? Yoon asked. For you, perhaps a few years of normal operation before the final transformation. For the fleet as a whole, maybe a decade before we can no longer return to human space. Yoon nodded. It was enough time to save humanity. After that, the Ghost Fleet would become something else entirely. Eternal guardians watching from between the stars. The void drives activated with a sound like reality tearing. One by one, the ships of the Ghost Fleet faded from normal space, entering the gray emptiness between dimensions. They moved through the void at speeds that made light seem slow, racing toward humanity's darkest hour. Behind them, the ring structure continued its eternal work, preparing for wars that had not yet begun against enemies that had not yet arrived. In the depths of the galactic core, ancient machines built weapons for battles that would determine the fate of the entire universe. Admiral Yoon felt the change accelerating in her body as they traveled through the void. Soon, she would be more energy than matter. But first, she had a promise to keep. She had to bring her people home. The space around Kepler Station erupted into chaos as Vorthak bioships began their final assault. Admiral Lee Taewon watched from the command bridge as alien assault pods drilled through the station's outer hull, like parasites burrowing into flesh. Each pod released dozens of insect-like warriors that immediately began converting human technology into organic matter. "Sir, we have lost sections 15 through 20, reported Commander Choi Hyerim. Her voice strained as she coordinated the defense. "The bioforms are spreading faster than we can contain them." Lee gripped the railing as another explosion shook the station. Through the viewports, he could see the massive Vorthak fleet moving closer, their living ships pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to mock human efforts to resist. Dr. Park Minji looked up from her instruments with wide eyes. "Admiral, something is happening. The Vorthak are transmitting on frequencies we have never detected before. High-priority signals going out to deep space." "What kind of signals?" "Fear responses. Panic markers. They are calling for help." Park paused, checking her readings again. "Admiral, these are the same genetic fear markers I've found before. They are terrified of something." Before Lee could respond, the station's long-range sensors began screaming warnings. Lieutenant Han Youngji's hands flew over his controls as he tried to process the incoming data. "Admiral, we have multiple contacts approaching from the galactic core. Energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. They are moving at impossible speeds through hyperspace." Lee felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever was coming could be salvation or destruction. Either way, it would arrive soon. The main view screen flickered and filled with static. Then, cutting through the interference, came a voice that made everyone on the bridge freeze. It was human, but changed somehow. Deeper, more resonant, as if it came from everywhere at once. "Kepler Station, this is Ghost Fleet Actual. Admiral Yoon Jiwoo commanding. We have come home to finish what we started." Lee stared at the screen in shock. Admiral Yoon had been declared dead 50 years ago along with the entire deep space expedition. The Ghost Fleet was a legend, a story told to give hope to desperate soldiers. "This is Admiral Lee Taewon commanding Kepler Station. Admiral Yoon, we thought you were dead." A sound came through the speakers that might have been laughter, but it echoed strangely, as if coming from multiple dimensions at once. "Death is a human concept, Admiral Lee. We are something else now." The space around the station began to shimmer and bend. Reality itself seemed to ripple like water, and then they appeared. Ships that looked like they were made of living shadow and starlight. The Ghost Fleet materialized from nowhere, their hulls flickering between solid matter and empty space. Lee counted 200 vessels, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. They moved with fluid grace, their weapons already charging with energy that made the nearby stars dim. The Vorthak bioships immediately changed course, abandoning their assault on the station to face this new threat. "All Kepler Station personnel, withdraw to minimum safe distance," Admiral Yoon's voice commanded. "We will handle the infestation." Admiral Song Kyungmin's voice joined the communication from the flagship Eternal Dawn. His words carried the same strange resonance, as if spoken by someone who no longer fully existed in normal space. "Ghost Fleet, deploy void weapons. Target priority, all Vorthak bioforms within the station." Lee watched in amazement as beams of pure darkness shot from the Ghost Fleet ships. The energy passed harmlessly through the station's hull and human personnel, but wherever it touched Vorthak bioforms, they simply vanished. Not destroyed or vaporized, they ceased to exist entirely. "Leaving behind only empty space, how is that possible?" Commander Hyerim whispered. Dr. Park was frantically analyzing the weapon signatures. The energy readings show space-time manipulation. They are not destroying the Vorthak. They are removing them from reality. The Vorthak fleet responded with desperate fury. Their bioships launched clouds of acid that could eat through any known material. Living torpedoes that grew larger as they flew. Plasma beams that could melt planets. All of it struck the Ghost Fleet ships and passed through them harmlessly. as if they were attacking shadows. Captain Ryujiho's voice crackled through the communications as his ship phased through a Vorthak biocruiser. Void Marines begin boarding operations. Let us remind them why they fear the darkness. Ghost Fleet soldiers materialized inside Vorthak ships like phantoms. They wore armor that seemed to absorb light and carried weapons that fired concentrated nothingness. Where normal bullets would bounce off Vorthak bioarmor, the void weapons simply deleted whatever they hit. Colonel Bei Sunho led the assault on the largest bioship, his enhanced form moving through bulkheads as if they were air. His squad of Void Marines followed, their movements creating ripples in space-time that the Vorthak could not comprehend or counter. Admiral Lee, Yoon's voice called again. Prepare your station for immediate evacuation. Our arrival has triggered a response from the Vorthak High Command. They are sending everything they have. Lee looked at the tactical display and felt his blood turn cold. New signatures were appearing at the edge of the system. Dozens of them. Each one was massive beyond imagination. Ships the size of moons, powered by the energy of captured stars. Dr. Park, are you seeing this? Park nodded grimly. Throne ships, the mobile homes of the Vorthak High Queens. I have read about them in ancient records, but I never thought they actually existed. Engineer Onari's voice joined the communication from the Ghost Fleet. Admiral Lee, the throne ships are equipped with Galaxy-class weapons. They can crack planets and devour entire solar systems. Even with our void technology, we cannot guarantee victory against so many. The first throne ship entered the system and its presence warped space around it. The dying star that Kepler Station orbited began to flicker as the massive bioship fed on its energy. Smaller Vorthak vessels poured from its launch bays like insects from a disturbed hive. Admiral Yoon's image finally appeared on the main screen, and Lee had to suppress a gasp. She was still recognizably human, but changed. Her skin was translucent, showing networks of light beneath. Her eyes glowed with blue fire, and when she moved, reality seemed to bend around her. Admiral Lee, we need to discuss strategy. The Vorthak have committed their core fleet to this battle. If we can defeat them here, we can break their hold on human space forever. But the cost? What cost? Lee asked. To fight beings of this power, we must become something more than human. The transformation we have undergone has limits. To access our full potential, we must abandon our physical forms entirely. We will win, but we will no longer be able to return to human space. Lee looked around his bridge at the men and women who had fought beside him for so long. They were exhausted, outnumbered, and facing impossible odds. But they were still human in a way that the Ghost Fleet no longer was. Admiral Yoon, what do you need from us? Time, and coordinates for every human civilian in the system. We will protect them. But the final battle must be fought in the deep void where our weapons will not accidentally destroy planets. More throne ships were arriving every minute. The space around Kepler Station filled with biovessels that dwarfed anything Lee had ever imagined. But the Ghost Fleet was growing too, as more ships emerged from the void with each passing moment. Dr. Lim Hajin's voice came from the Ghost Fleet flagship. Admiral Lee, we have detected something else. The Vorthak fear response is growing stronger. They are not just afraid of us. They are afraid of what comes after us. What do you mean? The ancient records speak of a cosmic cycle. The Vorthak flee from us, but we all flee from something else. Something that makes the Vorthak look like children playing with toys. Lee stared out at the gathering armadas, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down on him. Whatever happened in the next few hours would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of the entire galaxy. In the distance, space began to tear open as more throne ships arrived, each one larger than the last. The final battle was about to begin. The arrival of the Vorthak throne ships changed everything. Admiral Lee Taewon watched from Kepler Station as the massive biovessels arranged themselves in a pattern that hurt to look at. Each ship was the size of a small moon, covered in organic towers that pulsed with sickly light. They moved through space like living things, trailing streams of smaller vessels behind them. Admiral, Dr. Park Minji called from her station, I am detecting something impossible. The largest throne ship is showing genetic markers that are millions of years old. The creature commanding it is ancient beyond measure. On the Ghost Fleet flagship, Admiral Yoon Jiwoo felt the change accelerating in her body. The blue glow in her eyes was spreading through her entire form. Soon she would no longer be able to maintain physical shape at all. But first she had to face an enemy from her nightmares. Dr. Lim, she said to the xenoarchaeologist, bring up the architect records about the original war. Dr. Lim Hajin's translucent fingers moved over controls that responded to her thoughts rather than touch. The main screen filled with ancient images, star charts showing the galaxy as it was millions of years ago, before the Vorthak plague began. The throne ships were the mobile capitals of the Vorthak Empire, Dr. Lim explained. Each one houses a high queen that remembers the time before humans existed, before most species existed. They have been waiting in the galactic center for millions of years, feeding on dark matter and growing stronger. Void Marshal Han Youngji materialized on the bridge, his form flickering between solid matter and energy. He had volunteered for the most extreme modifications, becoming something that existed primarily in the spaces between dimensions. Marshal, what is your assessment? Admiral Yoon asked. The High Queens are afraid, Han replied, his voice echoing from multiple realities at once. Their bioships are releasing the same fear hormones that Dr. Park detected at Kepler Station, but they are not afraid of us. They are afraid of what our arrival means. Through the quantum communication link, they could hear Admiral Lee coordinating the evacuation of Kepler Station. Human civilians were being loaded into transport ships as quickly as possible. The Ghost Fleet had promised to protect them, but the coming battle would reshape local space itself. The largest throne ship began to broadcast on frequencies that made reality shiver. The voice that emerged was like the sound of dying stars, ancient and filled with cosmic rage. Children of the void, the High Queen's voice boomed. You wear the stench of the architects. We destroyed them once. We will destroy you as well. Admiral Yoon stepped forward, her form beginning to phase in and out of normal space. Prime Queen Zithara, the architect record spoke of you, the first of your kind to taste the flesh of stars. You know nothing, little shadow. We have fed on the energy of 1,000 galaxies. We have watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. What makes you think your borrowed power can stand against us? The answer came from an unexpected source. Deep in the ring structure at the galactic core, something stirred. The last architect, a being that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago, reached across space to touch Admiral Yoon's mind. Images flooded her consciousness. The original war, the architect civilization at its peak, and something else. The true reason the Vorthak had become a plague across the galaxy. They were not conquerors. They were refugees fleeing from something that made them look insignificant. Dr. Lim, Admiral Yoon said urgently, access the deepest architect archives. Search for references to the Devourers. Dr. Lim's eyes widened as she processed the ancient data. Admiral, there are records here that were sealed until now. The architects did not just fight the Vorthak. They were preparing for something else. Something that exists in the space between galaxies. The Devourers, cosmic entities that consumed entire galactic clusters, leaving behind only empty void. The architect ring was not just a weapon against the Vorthak. It was an early warning system and the first line of defense against something far worse. How long do we have? Admiral Yoon asked. The sealed records estimate 10,000 years before the next wave of Devourers reaches this galaxy. But Admiral, the Vorthak expansion was meant to prepare defenses. Their bioships, their technology, their entire civilization was designed to create a galactic immune system. The terrible irony became clear. Humanity had been fighting the wrong enemy. The Vorthak were not invaders. They were desperate survivors trying to build defenses against cosmic horror. Their methods were brutal, but their goal was survival for all life in the galaxy. Captain Ryu Jiho's voice crackled through the communication system. Admiral, the throne ships are powering up their main weapons. Energy readings are off the scale. Through the viewports, they could see space itself beginning to crack around the Vorthak fleet. The bioships were drawing power directly from the quantum foam that underlied reality, weapons that could unravel the fundamental forces holding matter together. Ghost Fleet, prepare for final phase, Admiral Yoon commanded. All personnel, begin voluntary transcendence procedures. Across the 200 ships of the Ghost Fleet, human crew members made the ultimate sacrifice. They allowed the void technology to complete its transformation, abandoning their physical forms to become beings of pure energy. The ships themselves began to change, their hulls dissolving into patterns of living light. Admiral Lee watched from Kepler Station as the Ghost Fleet transformed before his eyes. The ships became geometric patterns of energy that hurt to look at directly. They were no longer vessels in any sense humans could understand. They were focal points for forces that existed outside normal physics. The Vorthak High Queens responded with fury and desperation. Their throne ships launched attacks that could shatter planets, but the energy passed harmlessly through the transcended humans. The Ghost Fleet had become something that existed primarily in higher dimensions, touching normal space only when they chose to. Prime Queen Zithara, Admiral Yoon's voice now came from everywhere at once, no longer requiring communication equipment. We understand now. You were preparing defenses, but your methods would have destroyed billions of innocent lives. Sacrifice is necessary for survival, the ancient alien replied. Individual lives mean nothing compared to galactic survival. You are wrong, Admiral Yoon said, her consciousness now spread across multiple dimensions. Life finds another way. The battle that followed defied description. Energy weapons that could crack moons met shields made of folded spacetime. Bioships the size of asteroids fought beings that existed as living mathematics. Reality itself became the battlefield. But the Ghost Fleet had advantages the Vorthak could not match. They could phase through attacks, strike from directions that did not exist in normal space, and coordinate their movements across multiple dimensions simultaneously. One by one, the throne ships fell silent, their biohulls dissolving into component atoms. Prime Queen Zithara made one final, desperate gamble. She opened a portal to the galactic center and began to call something through it, something vast and hungry that had been sleeping in the dark matter between stars. Admiral? Dr. Lim's voice was fading as she too transcended physical existence. She is calling one of the Devourers, a young one, but still capable of consuming entire solar systems. Admiral Yoon felt the last traces of her humanity slip away as she prepared to face a cosmic horror beyond imagination. But in her transformed state, she could see patterns and possibilities that no human mind could comprehend. Ghost Fleet, she commanded. Prepare the ring weapon. We end this now. At the galactic core, the ancient architect ring began to power up for the first time in millions of years. Energy that could reshape galaxies flowed through conduits made of crystallized spacetime. The weapon that had once driven back the Devourers was awakening again, but using it would require one final sacrifice. Someone would have to become the focusing element, channeling the ring's power through their transformed consciousness. They would gain the power to fight cosmic entities, but they would never be able to return to any form resembling humanity. Admiral Yoon looked at the approaching Devourer and made her choice. She had promised to bring her people home. This was the only way to keep that promise. The thing that emerged from the portal defied human understanding. The young Devourer stretched across space like a living shadow, its form shifting between dimensions. It had no fixed shape, existing as hunger itself given consciousness. Stars dimmed in its presence as it fed on their light before even reaching them. Admiral Lee Taewon watched from the evacuation ships carrying refugees from Kepler Station. The human fleet was moving to minimum safe distance, but there was no truly safe distance from what was coming. The Devourer's presence warped spacetime itself, making their instruments scream warnings. Dr. Park, Lee called to the scientist aboard his command ship. What are we looking at? Dr. Park Minji's hands shook as she read her instruments. It exists in 11 dimensions simultaneously. The part we can see is just a shadow of its true form. Admiral, this thing could consume our entire solar system in minutes. Prime Queen Zithara's ancient voice echoed across space as her throne ship began to dissolve. The Devourer was feeding on Vorthak bioships as well as everything else in its path. See what you have brought upon us, Shadow Children. See the hunger that drives all life before it. But Admiral Yoon Jiwoo was no longer listening to the dying alien queen. Her consciousness had expanded beyond anything recognizably human. She could perceive the quantum threads that held reality together, see the weak points where space-time could be manipulated, and she could feel the ring weapon at the galactic core responding to her will. Ghost Fleet. Her voice came from everywhere at once. All remaining personnel, final transcendence now. We cannot fight this thing with anything resembling human limitations. Across the transformed ships of the Ghost Fleet, the last traces of humanity vanished. Captain Ryu Jiho felt his physical form dissolve into pure energy, his consciousness expanding to encompass multiple realities. Colonel Bae Sunho became a living weapon of crystallized spacetime. Engineer Onari merged with the ring weapon itself, becoming its living interface. The Devourer turned its attention to the Ghost Fleet, sensing power that might actually threaten it. Tentacles of dark energy lashed out across light years, each one capable of draining entire star systems. But they passed harmlessly through the transcended humans, who no longer existed in the same dimensional framework as normal matter. Dr. Lim Hajin's voice came from the quantum foam itself as she accessed the deepest architect records. Admiral, I have found the weapon protocols. But the cost. To channel this much power, you will have to become the focusing lens yourself. You will gain the power of a cosmic force, but you will never be able to interact with normal space again. Admiral Yoon felt the weight of the decision. Her people needed a protector, but they also needed to remember what they were protecting. Someone had to remain human enough to care about individual lives. Dr. Lim, transfer all weapon control to me. Send the final evacuation coordinates to Admiral Lee, and record a message for humanity. What message, Admiral? Tell them that we chose to become something else so they could remain themselves. Tell them that love is stronger than hunger, hope is stronger than fear, and that someone will always be watching from the dark between stars. The ring weapon at the galactic core reached full power. Energy that had been gathering for millions of years flowed through conduits of crystallized time, focused through the consciousness of a human who had chosen to become something more. Admiral Yoon felt herself changing one final time, becoming a being of pure will and cosmic force. The Void Admiral, as she would be known in later legends, reached out with power that dwarfed stars. Space-time itself bent to her will as she wrapped the Devourer in layers of folded reality. The cosmic entity thrashed and fought, but it was trapped in a prison made of compressed dimensions. You cannot hold me forever, little god. The Devourer's voice was like the death of galaxies. I am hunger itself. I am entropy given form. You are right, the Void Admiral replied, her voice now carrying the weight of cosmic law. I cannot hold you forever, but I can hold you long enough. The ring weapon discharged its accumulated power in a burst that rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in local space. The blast created a dead zone where the Vorthak biotechnology could not function, where the Devourer's hunger could find no purchase. The effect spread outward at the speed of light, creating pockets of protected space throughout the galaxy. The young Devourer found itself cut off from its food sources, trapped in a reality where its essential nature could not manifest. With a shriek that shattered asteroids, it retreated through the portal back to the void between galaxies. Prime Queen Zithara's last words echoed through space as her throne ship finally died. Perhaps you have found another way after all. The battle was over, but the cost was immense. The Ghost Fleet existed now as barely visible shadows at the edge of perception. They had become eternal guardians, protecting the galaxy from threats that normal militaries could never hope to fight. But they were no longer human in any meaningful sense. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the evacuation ship Hope's Dawn, watching as colony ships began their journey to new worlds. Behind them, Kepler Station was being rebuilt with technology salvaged from Vorthak bioships. The aliens themselves had largely fled, seeking refuge in the outer galactic rim. Admiral, came a whisper from the dark between stars, barely audible over the ship's communication system. This is the Void Admiral. Status report. Lee looked out at the stars, knowing that something that had once been Admiral Yoon Ji-woo was watching from spaces his eyes could not see. The evacuation is complete. 3 million civilians are safe and heading to new colony worlds. The Vorthak have withdrawn from human space. Good. We will continue to patrol the deep void, watching for threats from beyond the galaxy. But Admiral Lee, yes? Remember us as we were, not as what we became. Tell the children stories of humans who chose to become monsters so that others could remain human. Years passed. Captain Kim Do-hyun, now an old man with gray hair and tired eyes, stood before a group of young colonists on the world of New Haven. They had asked him to tell them about the war, about the heroes who saved humanity. The Ghost Fleet is still out there, he said, pointing up at the stars. You cannot see them, but they are watching. Admiral Yoon and her people chose to become something else, something that exists between the spaces where light travels. They guard us from things we cannot imagine. A young girl raised her hand. Will they ever come home? Kim smiled sadly. They are home, child. The space between stars is their home now. But sometimes, on very quiet nights, if you listen carefully to the static between radio stations, you can hear them, whispers from the void, reminding us that we are not alone. In the deep dark between galaxies, the Void Admiral and her transformed fleet maintained their eternal watch. They had become something beyond human understanding, but at their core they remembered love. They remembered the weight of individual lives, the importance of hope, the value of choosing compassion over efficiency. And when new threats emerged from the cosmic dark, when hungry things from other realities tried to break through into normal space, they were ready. The Ghost Fleet, humanity's eternal guardians, kept their vigil in the spaces where no living thing could survive. The galaxy was safe, for now. And somewhere in the quantum foam between dimensions, something that had once been human smiled with satisfaction. They had kept their promise. They had brought their people home even if they could never return themselves. Hope had been lost, but a human Warfleet had broken through the void. And in becoming something more than human, they had ensured that humanity itself could continue to exist, to grow, to love, and to dream among the stars.